Sheila, are you there?
I am.
Hi, Sheila. How are you?
I'm here. Hello.
Good.
No, it's Tim.
So I have,
I'm not hearing you. Hold on.
you're not hearing me?
I don't know why my earpods just kind of died. Oh,
I'm making adjustments here. So can you hear me now?
damn it. I don't know what's wrong with my earpods. I'm trying to figure them out here. Dadgummit. It was on just a year ago.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
I can. Now, can you see that?
Yes.
All right, good.
But I don't know why I'm not hearing it through my earpods. This is so weird.
All right.
Hey, Walter. This is so weird. All right. Say something, Tim.
Testing. This is Tim. We were out fishing today and caught a zillion trout.
No, you did not.
We did. Wayne and I went to Lake Leary over at Lloyd Wildlife Management Area.
Huh.
And we fished from about 11 a.m. until 2:30 p.m. and we probably caught 50 fish apiece. They just stocked it, with 1,500 trout. So it was like shooting trout in the barrel.
Where'd you go, Tim?
Lake Leary at Lloyd Wildlife Management Area.
All right.
Oh, nice.
I'm gonna jump off and then back on because
Okay.
for some reason my earpods aren't working. I don't know why.
Yeah. Then I'm going to make an
Work
adjustment in my video thing here.
And I will be back in a sec. I have to get one thing.
Well, it's good. We're all making our necessary adjustments.
Those are connected. All right, let's try it again. No.
All right. Can you hear now?
No, I can't. I can hear through Charlie's, but I can't hear through mine. So I'm gonna log out and back in.
Okay. Walter, we're going to take Jack Steiber out there tomorrow, if you're interested.
Really? Let me see if I can. I've got a doctor's thing, but I don't know exactly what time, Tim. Let me see if I can go. What time are you going?
We're gonna meet out there at 11 o'clock. So
Same place?
yeah, at Lloyd Wildlife Management Area, the lake. It's called Lake Leary.
Lloyd Management. I've never been there. I'll send you a message. I just have to look it up here.
Okay.
If I can be there, I'll definitely be there.
You're welcome to come.
Well, I appreciate that.
And I fished Gunpowder Creek on, let's see, what day was that? Monday or Tuesday. I can't. And did really well. I fished with a friend, Morris Cecil, who is actually the person who told me about NKFF.
Mm-hmm.
And we, between the two of us, we caught 16 trout. So.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, it was great.
Did you go downstream from where we were?
Yes, well downstream, yeah.
Hey, Tim.
Yeah,
Do you know what the meeting number or URL is?
yeah.
Because it
Hang on a
won't
second.
sign in.
Yeah, you want me to email it to you or?
Well, I mean, I was just on, and now all of a sudden I can't get in it. But it's
Okay.
asking to join the
Good.
meeting, and it's saying meeting number or URL. When I put
Okay.
NKFF, and it says it's invalid.
You go to the website?
I went to the link that from the meeting, from the email that I got. I got Charlie on, and I did it exactly the same way.
Okay. Try going to our website.
Okay.
Just
I
go
mean, I
to
got
homepage.
Charlie on with no problem. It's so weird. Oh, now I'm hearing everything. He's not yelling at me now.
I wound up reloading the app. Sheila, I don't know if that helps, but I had deleted the old ones from what we used to have with Josh's links. So I just reinstalled everything.
All right, now it's really loud. Okay, I'm gonna mute Charlie. All right. Now everything's really loud.
Well, we see you.
Oh my. Okay. That's better. Okay, so we don't have anything to discuss as far as like announcements and stuff.
Well, one thing you might announce is just that the stockings are, I'm going to put this out, but stockings are taking place on the Finns Lakes. And, we're catching fish in beautiful weather. Now, can we unmute people? Like I see Austin Nichols is on and Justin Burns is on. Randy, how do you unmute those people?
I think they have to do it themselves.
No, they don't. Am I muted?
No.
Yeah, no.
No.
Oh, wait. Yeah, actually, they do.
That's how it was with Charlie.
I just clicked unmute on Austin Nichols and it says request sent. So they will have to unmute themselves.
Well, I just wanted to welcome them. Hey, Austin and Justin.
Hey,
Burns?
Tim.
Yeah, good. And Justin Burns, are you there? Unmute yourself. Now, Randy, you have control such that you can mute everybody, right? Kind of a universal mute.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, this is not how I normally do the fly tying thing, so I'm trying to familiarize myself here real quick. Yes, I can.
Good.
Okay.
I also
Hey Tim, what's our speaker's name?
Mac, M-A-C,
Okay.
Brown.
I was thinking it was Matt, so I'm glad I asked.
Yeah.
Okay. He's with Mac Brown Fly Fish
Right.
and
Um,
in Bryson City.
It's in Bryson City. I asked him to speak for two reasons. Number one, we are a federation, or I'm sorry, a Fly Fishers International now, affiliated club. And we've really never had anybody talk to us about the fly casting certification program. And Mac is a Master 2 certified casting instructor. There's only like 50 of them in the whole United States.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And a Master 2 is qualified to test Master 1s. And Master 1s are qualified to test for certified instructors. So I thought it was time that we as a club learned more about casting certification. And we, in the club, we don't have any certified instructors.
Right.
And I've made a decision myself that I'm going to go for certification. And just because, you know, what the hey.
Why not, right? Who was that?
I don't know.
Was it John?
It was John. I muted you, John. You getting a lot of feedback.
So anyway, Mac evidently spoke to our club a long time ago.
Okay.
Craig Tresher told me that. And one of the things that Craig remembers about it is that he did a casting clinic while he was here, and that he stripped all of the line off his reel and cast it all in one fell swoop.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's pretty
Wow.
incredible.
Hi, Marty. Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
So just so everybody knows, in order to talk, you have to unmute yourself.
Hi, Sheila.
So what's everybody been doing? We went down to Polywog on Sunday. Charlie caught one fish. It was so hot I couldn't handle it. I had long pants on and long sleeves. I was dying. But it's the first time I'd been there. I'd never been there before, so.
I went down to Otter Creek yesterday and fished for 6 hours and didn't catch a thing.
Oh, really?
Nothing. And nobody did. I talked to 12 different people and not a soul was catching fish, which made me feel better, but still was frustrating. Right.
We're going to go to Bardstown this weekend because where are we going to, what's the name of the place?
Kentucky Gun Company.
We're going to go to Kentucky Gun Company.
Oh, cool.
I don't know anything about it, but, and I was telling my doctor at work before I left today that we were going down there this weekend. And he said, okay, well, if you're going to Bardstown, if you happen to run across any Henry McKenna 10-year, pick me some up. I'm like, okay. I was like, all right then, but don't spend more than $100 for it, he said. It's like, all right. So I'm like, so apparently that's a highly sought after bourbon. I don't know. I know nothing about bourbon other than what Dr. Peerless tells me. So
Can I talk? You hear me?
Yeah,
This is Marty.
yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, Marty.
Hi, how are we all doing?
Good.
This really isn't important, but many years ago, I went out with Mac Brown. My wife gave me a day with the instructor from the Snowbird, which is way down someplace. And even though he took me out, if he's still doing what he was doing then, after he tried to help me, he's really great.
Well, sounds like he
Oh,
is.
good. Good.
It was a long time ago, and he tried his best, but I wasn't much of a student.
Well,
Yeah, it poured rain too.
All right, I think we lost you, Marty.
what happened?
Yes, I don't know.
I don't know.
I should hit buttons.
Randy, did you do that share screen? No.
Hi, Joe.
Yeah, I wasn't supposed. I didn't think it was going out to everybody.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Sterling.
Hello.
Hi, Mr. Renner. Yeah, I do want to get when we do the pledge, I want to make sure we do have the flag up, Randy.
I just didn't know that I was overriding everybody, so yeah.
Oh, it's
I thought
okay.
I was just messing around for my
No problem.
little amusement.
No problem. I guess we need to make sure that the speaker's on before we start anything, though, right?
Sorry, Sheila. I appreciate it. I was muted, so I apologize for not responding to you.
That's okay.
It's good to see everyone. Darn, it's good to see everyone.
Yeah, I like doing it this way where we can see everybody.
Yeah.
What's the presenter name?
Mac Brown.
MAC. Yeah. So I'm going to try to go down to Carson City next week for a few days. I think Wayne Noakes and I are going to go down.
Well, Tim, where are you going?
To Bryson City.
North Carolina.
Yeah.
And you didn't invite me?
I didn't invite anybody. Because I didn't want a big group or anything.
You said you didn't want any competition in your fishing. Is that what you're telling me?
No, what I'm telling you is that I'm chicken. I'm
Gosh, I so miss just bantering with you and seeing you all so much. Gosh, I do.
There you go. Somebody's got.
Ron Albrecht, I just muted you. You've got a lot of feedback, so I muted you, Ron.
Somebody else has got a phone ringing in the back.
That's me. You can mute me.
I didn't see who was talking.
Sterling.
Yeah, we have our presenter is on here. Oh, we have our presenter.
Hi, Mac. It's Tim Guilfoyle.
Is it work?
Tim Guilfoyle, welcome.
Thank you. How you doing?
Good.
All right. Yeah, it's good to be here. I didn't know if it would work. That was pretty smooth.
I don't see you yet.
I'm up here. On mine, I'm on the top left. I don't know if that's the same for everybody, though.
I see you now.
Yep.
Your video wasn't up yet. That's why I didn't see it.
I've
I'm
got you.
Sheila. I'm the president.
Hi, Sheila. You look familiar. Did you go to the Atlanta? I think I've seen you at maybe the Atlanta show. You look familiar.
No.
Huh?
Didn't have the privilege to do that. No.
Okay.
If you've
No,
been
it's
at
nice to
Buff,
meet you.
maybe I've seen you at Buff, but that's Buff or the Kentuckiana show,
Right.
the Derby City show.
Okay.
Hi, Justin Burns. I see you now.
Hey guys, sorry. Yeah, I was on the call. I think it muted you. Right person, my kid scream in the background.
Hello, Mr. Cook.
Hi, Bill.
Yep.
How's everybody doing?
Good.
Doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing much better, thank you. And
Good to hear.
before we get started with the meeting, can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
I just want to thank everyone in the club for all of their get well cards, notes, messages, phone calls. It was just unbelievable and really helped me a lot to get through all of this. So one more time, the club comes through.
All right. That's what we're for.
That's right. Well, Bill Cook, it's Bill Renner here. Let me tell you, we're happy to have you on tonight. And anything you need, reach out. You probably got about 24 people that are responding in any minute's notice.
I know that's the
exactly right.
truth. And I was at a pizza place, I think Friday night, and saw this guy coming around the corner in a Cadillac with a trout sign on the front bumper.
Oh, shit.
We were just stopping by to pick up a to-go order, and I saw you cruising around the block looking for a parking spot.
We were there for dinner. You should have said something. I would have added a drink to your menu.
Food's great there, though.
The food was wonderful. It really was.
Where was it?
Bill, what's that pizza place called?
Oh,
Comparosa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just went there on Sunday. Yeah, we just went there on Sunday.
Okay. Yeah, I think
One of our
Susan and I
favorite places.
ate there with you, Sheila, and Charlie.
Yep, we sure did. It's one of our favorite restaurants. We love that place.
Well, should we go ahead and get started, Sheila?
Well, I would just like to make an acknowledgement that, so I would like everyone to look at Josh's profile now and how clean shaven and professional he looks.
Damn it. I didn't recognize.
All right, so let's get started, okay? We're gonna mute everybody but me. So mute Randy, and I'll unmute myself. All right, good deal. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna do the Pledge of Allegiance. If you can put the flag up for us. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. You can unmute everybody if you want to, Randy. All right, good deal. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll just do a moment of silence for everybody, for all of our first line workers. Okay. So the only announcement that we have right now is Tim was talking about they're going to be stocking all of the Fins lakes locally. So there'll be places for people to go fishing if they so inclined. With the cold weather coming up, it'll be perfect. So, and then from there, I guess we'll go ahead and introduce Mac Brown. He's our speaker for tonight.
I can make a brief introduction, and then Mac, you can
Okay.
Fill in the blanks.
Go right ahead.
I invited Mac for two reasons. One reason is that he's had a fly shop down in Bryson City, North Carolina, where we fish a lot in Western North Carolina for a long time. And it was actually instrumental in getting delayed harvest in Nantahala Gorge in the early 90s. I think it was the early 90s. And so I thought, he might have some tips for us who go and fish North Carolina, Western North Carolina. But more importantly, even that he is a Master 2 certified fly casting instructor for Fly Fishers International. We are a Fly Fishers International affiliated club, and I, for one, knew very little about the certification program. And I thought, given that we are an affiliated club, we ought to know more about fly casting certification in the club. FFI really leads the nation in fly fishing education, and the certification program is really quite a stellar program. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, Mac, but I think you are a Master 2, and I'm not sure that if you're a two-handed master as well or not. But Mac can cast like nobody I've ever seen, really quite amazing. And I thought it would be useful for us to learn about the casting program. So take it over, Mac. And Mac, you'll have to unmute yourself. Well, Mac. Right, Randy? Okay.
I was pushing the wrong button. I was pushing the little red microphone, but it's good to see everybody. And I know that I see Carol there, and Justin was in one of the casting classes, and I had Carol out in Denver last year. I asked a couple of CIs that we've had through the program, and then I'll talk about the history of the program. But I don't know if Paul really wants to hear it. I mean, with the history of like the sport, I was going to go into that as well. But so I'm going to call on him in a minute, just because I thought it'd be good for all of you to hear, which what we're going to talk about really is the preparation and what to expect. And I thought, well, he's one of the most recent ones. He's in Northern Ohio, and he came down to the school, I think it was 2 years ago, maybe 3, I believe 2. But I think it's good for you to hear as well, like what it was like for him to go through it. And he was successful taking his CI up there. But I'll tell you this, I was looking at the map today. There's actually, for as many good clubs, and like Kentucky's the northernmost part of the Southeastern Council. We're really right in the center of the Southeastern Council when Florida succeeded from Southeast and have their own council in the state of Florida. This is still like a huge market to grow, especially this summer. So I think it'd be good, educationally. I always look at it like to get other teachers around the country is to create more of a evolution of the sport in the right direction. And that's what really the country needs in a lot of areas. If you look at that, there's a lot of places in the Midwest where there's nobody within 500 miles to go get a casting lesson. And that's kind of too bad, you think would start getting more of them in those areas. But if you don't mind, if Paul could unmute, and I'm just going to let, I think that'd be good to do, because I don't want to make him stay a whole 2 hours to tell us his story at the end. So he might want to leave. If he wants to stay, you're more than welcome to stay too, Paul. But go ahead and just tell us a little bit about the process, what it was like for you. And that kind of gives everybody an idea. And then I'm going to talk about how to get there.
Well, I never mind hearing you talk, Mac, so don't worry about that. So hello, everybody. I'm Paul Barber. I'm up in the northwest corner of Ohio. I'm the only CI up here. Like Mac says, there's a lot of desert out there where you can't get instruction. So I made the trip quite a few times, the 10-hour drive down to see Mac. And I guess if, I started out, I'll be honest, I was a horrible caster. And I tried a bunch of stuff on the internet. Some of it's good, most of it's not. I ran into the FFF at the time, now Fly Fishers International. And I thought, well, if they're running the certification program, they know what they're talking about. So I tried doing the casts, and I thought I was doing okay. But then I'd go down and visit Mac and see where I really was. And that's the secret to this. Once you make the commitment that you'd like to be a casting instructor, it does take a while. It takes practice and some commitment. But the biggest thing is to have a mentor, at least somebody that can, you think you're making tight loops, but you're probably not. And somebody like Mac who administers the test, those are the best guys to help you, because they know what the test is like. They can run you through a practice test. They know what they're looking for. So I think, I don't know because of the virus if he's doing it, but Mac has a school that's really valuable. When I was there, and it was 2 years ago, Mac, there was 4 master casting instructors in one spot, and that doesn't happen. So Mac is able to pull that together. We had people from all over the country. We had somebody from way out west come in to be there with Mac. So you guys are a lot closer than I am. I would avail yourself of that if you get the chance. It just takes commitment. You've got to want to do it. I was out practicing in the yard tonight. It was almost 50 degrees, so that was good enough. If you kind of go at it without a lot of commitment, just kind of half into it, you can do it, but it's gonna take a while. So it's actually a lot of fun, and your fishing will improve exponentially. You'll get the fly where you want it, and you'll be able to envision how to make a cast. You might have to cast under something, over something, around something, and you'll be able to do it. So it's a lot of fun. I would recommend it. It can be stressful, especially when you go to take your test. My test was over in DC. I had to drive over to DC to take my test, and it was hard, but you meet some great folks, and you learn an awful lot about it. So anything else you'd like me to cover, Mac?
No, that's great. I appreciate it, Paul.
Paul, I have a question. From the time you decided I'm going to do this to the time you passed your test, what was the time frame? A year?
Well, there was some personal stuff in there. I had a son get married on the summer. I was going to take the test, so that kind of delayed me. I would say it was probably 3 years, and I was really serious about it the last 2, and that's when I started visiting with Mac to kind of gauge where you are. That's where Mac or somebody like him can really help. Am I close? Am I good enough? Should I delay? Because you're probably not going to have a test in your backyard. You're going to have to drive or fly, and it's best to be ready when you take it. But I'd say somebody with decent casting ability, if you're willing to practice, you could probably do it in a couple of years. Wouldn't you say so, Mac?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's realistic. I think it's different for everyone. I mean, it's just different for everybody. I think it depends how much time they have to practice. You know, how much they've been working. I think all that's part of the equation. So yeah, I think it's just different. But usually I'd say it's between that, like 2. I'd say that's usually normal.
Okay.
That's good. Well, I appreciate it. Paul, I was going to say, if I don't know how many of you look at the Federation website, but you can download. I shared it on the chat thing. Now I'm trying to figure out how to make the chat window go away. But what I did is I put it up there, and that's the page where if you're curious about what it is, I highly recommend just pull it down and start to look at it. And it has a series of tasks and a few teaching questions at the end. And I think it just kind of tells you what they're looking for. But as an examiner, I can tell you pretty much conclusively that the first task, it looks real easy, doesn't it? You read the first task and it says throw 6 narrow loops back and forth. Pretty much every test I've ever been on, you can dictate already pass fail on that first 6 tasks. And the reason I say that is if it's a default and there's already issues doing that task, it's going to show up every time the entire test. So I know that sounds like a simple thing, but there's a lot more than meets the eye there to just say, let's throw a nice loop back and forth with, nice loop shape, top, bottom parallel legs. But the CICP is what I was kind of planning on talking about first, because that's what Tim asked me to cover first, and we'll go into the CI stuff. The CICP was really Mel's vision. Mel and Jimmy Green started the program. Mel was really excited about it, and he got Jimmy to come on board. Mel and Jimmy and Gary Borger, I'm not sure if everybody's familiar, but Jimmy Green is the one who made a lot of fly designs in California, started Fenwick Rods, built the first carbon fiber rod, started Sage Company with Don Green. So he's an icon. He was my mentor, like my hero when I was a kid was Jimmy Green. And so my granddaddy recognized that when I was a teenager. And I got to go out to Idaho and spend a week with Jimmy and his wife, Carol. And it changed many things for me personally, because I grew up in East Tennessee, where I was kind of more into like throwing curves and tuck cast and all this. But Jimmy was world champion at 17 years old when he went to Italy. And Marvin Hedge was also a world champion. That's his claim to start the double haul. Does everybody know what double haul is on here? I mean,
Yes.
when you pull the line. So Marvin decided at the Portland Casting Club, they needed to take an icon, a young man with them, the next prodigy from the United States over to Europe. And so he went down and started working, and Jimmy grew up there near Golden Gate. And just within a year of training, so that's why when Paul was saying 2 years, well, I mean, when somebody like Marvin Hedge had the abilities that he had, and he was already a very accomplished caster, I think he only worked with Jimmy a year. And then within 1 year, Jimmy was world champion at 17 years old. So he broke a lot of barriers, and that was back in the 30s. So when they decided to do this whole casting certification program, I was excited because I heard about it back as he pretty young then. But I was like, I've got to do that, because they all taught together at the Fenwick School. Gary Borger and Mel Krieger and Jimmy, they were all friends, and they taught a lot together. So that's kind of the history of where it came from. I'll say this, that to get into doing this, what I would recommend to all of you, if you decide, hey, this is what I want to do, stay off of YouTube. Stay off. You know how a lot of times they say, here's recommended reading, and go into the rabbit hole of these 100 different books and read all these different things. I would stay away from that and focus wholeheartedly just on what they're asking, because there's a lot of different opinions when you read too many things, and all of a sudden your head starts to be confused with too many other thought processes. And I think it's easier to stay focused like on the tasks that they're talking about to start with. And I talk about this a lot in the schools as layers of an onion. So I'm going to give you an example of what I mean by that. If we had a group here, I do a lot of things with the school system here with kids that are still in elementary school. When I'm going to go teach like a third grader, and I have like 30 third graders at one time for PE. We're going to talk in a language that a third grader understands. Doesn't matter how much I know about it. I'm putting it exactly where they're going to be able to grasp it. If I'm talking with Paul didn't tell you, he's also an engineer. So I love talking with Paul when he was down here about casting stuff, because we could go a little bit deeper into the onion and talk about what it really is. And it's very different depending on who your student is, how you're going to approach and talk about it. But the program is really big on trying to keep things simple. And there's a lot of good articles on the FFI website. And I just realized yesterday, that's what I was working on last night. I talked to Bruce Richards and Bruce Williams. When I'm the editor of one of the editors of the Loop for the technical, anything that's technical, they always send it to me to read it for the newsletter for the FFI. And I realized I've been telling a lot of the students here that I have right now, well, just log on and go to the FFI and download the latest Loop. All of you know what the Loop is already. I mean, if you're a member, like you ever go on and read the Loop, the newsletter for the FFI? I'm just curious. Just go like that, raise your hand. None of you? Oh yeah, we got one. Well, we need to get more of you reading it, because I mean, when Bruce Richards, Al Burr, Steve Rajek, I mean, some of your greatest casters in the world, when they're writing articles on this stuff, that's the stuff you want to be reading, not Fly Fisherman Magazine, Fly Rod and Reel. If you want to become a casting geek, go read what these people are putting up, because it's really, really good, and I highly recommend it. But the students that I have, they're blocked from getting it. So we're trying to change that in the last 2 days. So that's a good thing that Tim called me, because I thought it was open to the public. Then I realized it's blocked. You have to be an FFI member. But like I said, and I thought you, when we have someone from a high school system here thinking about doing this, I don't think they ought to be a member. Knowledge is powerful, and knowledge needs to be public. I don't think the newsletter should be private, personally. So the other thing that's private, if you do think about the CI, the link that I sent, if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a really good 34-minute clip that Bruce Richards did with Molly Semenuk. And I don't know if you've seen that, but if you're thinking of doing it at all, I don't know if you've seen that, Paul, when you were studying the video that Bruce did.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sure. Very good, because he's nailing all of those tasks in under really. I mean, he talks excess and says, now this could be one of the faults. This could be the fault, but here's what we want. And then he shows you exactly what they're wanting. And I think for people to look at that and realize, here it is, it's really not that big a deal. I mean, they see it and they understand it. And I think that's really good video to go on there and watch. And you'll find that on that link that I sent as well. But I think a lot of times in teaching, though, we kind of look at this as talking about layers of an onion, of how deep do you want to go. And for the CI level, you have to realize it's a great program. For those of you watching that think, I don't CI, but I want to help, like maybe some kids in your area or somebody in your club, they also have a skills challenge. And I know Mike Arnold was real active with that. And is he in your club or the one at the North End?
Yeah.
Is he in your club?
He's in our club.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen Mike for years. He's been a real good FFI ambassador, because I've seen him at shows and things for FFI for over 30 years. And skills challenge maybe at your club. Has he put some on for your club?
I don't think he has.
Okay.
I think we talked about it, but I don't think it was ever done.
I got you. Well, that's another option. And I think the thing good with the skills challenge too.
Wow. He froze for me. Did he freeze for you?
Yeah. Looks like we got some connection issues.
I'm sorry.
You're freezing up on us, Mac.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you're cutting in and out.
Oh, that's not good. Well, let me tell me if it keeps doing it. If it does, I'll turn off everybody, because I've got the power at the computer here to shut everybody else off. That might be my little kid, like downloading something for school, because a lot of stuff's online right now. But I was going to tell you also about a sentence that I have it on my website. And I think one of the biggest things, what Paul was talking about there before, about how he prepared, that is the smartest way by far, because the people that go that route and get prepared, what I've seen here is close to 100% pass rate. We had one last year that didn't, but it was himself that did it. He was one of the best casters we've ever had come through the school, and I think he got a lot of nerves. So, I mean, he'll do it fine if he can just learn to relax himself. but it's been close to 100% over the years. And I think the thing that happens is a lot of people will say, I'm just going to go do that. I know 3 here right now in Western Carolina that just say they're going to go take the test. They're not going to prepare for it. They just think they're good enough at their age to just go take it, not know a thing about it. And I just think that's really, I'm not going to tell them not to. I told them, well, I'd get somebody to, at least to look at you to make sure you're there. Because I think it makes people, it's a bad experience. A lot of times if they go do it and it's that kind of outcome, of course, they're going to walk away from it. That's not what we're wanting. This program, the CICP, is really about teaching. You could be the greatest caster in the world, but you have to be able to convey it and teach it. That's what the emphasis is on with the program. Everybody thinks it's a skills challenge, like accuracy with bow and arrow or something, having a task that's being highly skilled. That is part of it, but the teaching is the biggest part of it. If you had to say what's the most important thing, you can teach it and convey it. And that's what Mel's vision was, and Jimmy, even when they started it. There's a good buddy of mine in England that teaches a lot named Mark Surtees. And I have one of these quotes on my site because he said it one day to me on the phone. This is about 20 years ago. But I think this is a good quote for people thinking about becoming casting geeks. And that would be, learn to class between perfection and imperfect reality by practicing between education and execution of the fundamentals. And what that really says, when he said it, I thought it was absolutely brilliant because I've seen this a lot over the years, especially in guiding, not so much for people that say I'm going to commit to doing the CI, but in guiding, I can tell you this, most people live in a fairy tale or a fantasy world because they don't fish enough. They're very limited in skill. And then they're expecting great delusions of grandeur once they get on the water. And I just say, and that's the truth. I mean, I can't, luckily, I'm not working with any of it, so I can say it except for Frank. Don't tell him, Frank. But that is the biggest thing, even in the CI, especially like Generation X or millennials. They'll come take the thing, didn't prepare at all, then they're devastated that they didn't go through easy. Well, it's like the old saying, I didn't fall off a cabbage truck last week either. I mean, I started casting at 5. I went and spent a week with Jimmy Green. I worked hard at casting pretty much all my life because I've always kind of been a casting geek. Because I grew up on a trout stream in East Tennessee. And I think part of the reason that pushed me as a kid really was more the reason that on the water, there was always something that happened every time out that I didn't know how to solve at the time. And so when that happened, I didn't tell Paul this when he was down here, I don't think, but when that happened, most of my book, the Casting Angles book I wrote back, I've compiled most of that around the age of 18 years old. I was working on it between 15 and 18. I'm 57 now, so that was a long time ago. But where those ideas came from for all the presentation casts were problems that I was having as a kid that I couldn't solve, and it wasn't in books and videos back then. And so I just started compiling them. And by the time I taught the college program here at Western Carolina, I thought, well, I'm going to go ahead and put it out. But that's the fun part about the sport, to be honest. I still love it as much today where you have a complexity situation on the water with a certain water current, a tree's in the way, and then you have a 30-mile-an-hour wind on top of it. We still got to pull this off and work magic. To me, that's what the sport's about, just like a big giant puzzle. And I still love it because of that, because every time I go out the door, I don't know what I'm going to have until I get there. And that's kind of the beauty of it. But you want me to run over a brief history, kind of a brief history of where we are today with this and like where it came from? Or do y'all
Yes. Yeah, do it.
I can do it real fast. It'd be kind of like a chronological timeline of fly fishing, where we are.
Do it.
Basically, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania is where it starts with the way you all fish today, by having a line that you can actually cast and propel somewhere. It's when Bethlehem, Pennsylvania came up with the bamboo rod, and they hollowed 6 pieces of bamboo out of Tonkin cane. And it's really a lot like the Reese Cup commercial years ago. Then in England, they come up with the silk line within the same year. So now we've got the rod, but we didn't have a line to put on it. England comes up with the silk line. They come across the ocean with each. Okay, now they got our rods over in England. We've got the silk lines in America. So it really is a hotbed in Pennsylvania is where it all started. Before that, everyone in America would have had a long rod, like a piece of just straight bamboo stick with a piece of horsehair tied off the end. Okay, before 1854. So it was all tenkara before that. And a lot of times people get that confused. They think, oh, fly fishing's been around 5,000 years. No, it hasn't. Been around since 1854. Yes, there was people that fished 5,000 years ago with hooks, but not with the way you know it, with the fly rod and the line that goes out. So I think that's interesting, because what that tells me is there's really not been that many people that worked like on the sport since 1854. So I'm going to tell you the brief history of who were the greats. There's a guy named Marriott in England. In 1860, Marriott was 35-year world champion out of England. He was the best caster probably ever to pick up a rod. Have any of you ever heard of him, Marriott? He's the one that taught Frederick Halliford how to dress dry flies. All the things that Halliford wrote about was basically a reiteration of what Marriott told him to put down. So he was a legend. And I'll tell you something funny, I'm going to get into that anyway later, but just talking about grip on a fly rod. Can you all see this right here? This is how I hold the rod. This is the V. That's the back of the rod. Marriott cast that way for 35 years and never lost an accuracy to anybody. And he also threw his world and stuff back then with that same grip. So then you have to ask the question, well, if for that 35 years he was the world's greatest, and then all of the Americans' world greatest all use that same grip, it makes you wonder, like I've often wondered these things, how did this become so common with the thumb on the back? Like, where'd that come from? None of the did it since 1854. I mean, there's all these questions once you get into this casting geek stuff. That's why I love it. It's like, where did that get popular when it was never the truth? That's kind of what I'm saying. So it's really a fascinating thing. So the American greats, after Marriott, we have a lot of really good ones. Basically, the Chicago Club, they never produced it except Frank Steele. Of course, Frank Steele, everybody heard of Frank Steele. He was one of the greats in the 30s. He was the first American to throw a perfect accuracy score in a world event. So he won the world championship as well. But he was the first American to throw a perfect score. How did Frank Steele cast? I'll just tell you, since we're talking about casting, Frank Steele cast with the rod right to the center of his head for accuracy. So his elbow has to lift up. If you do that with elbow forward, well, it's kind of a pretty deadly accurate technique, because it's bringing the rod itself right to his dominant eye each time he's picking the rod up and down. But the other ones in America that helped a great deal would have been Marvin Hedge in 1932 in St. Louis, Missouri. My grandfather went to St. Louis to watch this. That was where the U.S. Nationals happened, was in St. Louis. Marvin Hedge shows up. No one ever double hauled before that. So everybody casts like this, elbow forward. Marvin Hedge shows up and he pulls the string and he gives it back. And he goes forward and he pulls the string. He was in all kinds of outdoor papers in 32 because he changed the game. Totally changed the game with the double haul. So he was one of the big icons, but Marvin didn't invent it. Like everybody thinks Marvin invented the double haul. Well, here's the story. Mooch Abrams at the Portland Club, where Marvin was from, Mooch Abrams got in a wreck and he was confined to a wheelchair. And Mooch Abrams was one of the finest casters at the Portland Club. And so when Mooch got hurt, he couldn't use his body like he was used to before. So Mooch started pulling on the line. He's practicing at the pond still sitting in a wheelchair, and Marvin saw him one day doing it, and he was casting better than Marvin. And he's sitting down. So he taught it to Marvin Hedge, and then Marvin breaks it out at the World Championship. But the great ones from California, we'll move over to California next, because that's where you have the likes of Myron Greger, Jimmy Green, Steve Rajeff, Chris Koritz, Tim Rajeff. All those were taught and mentored from Jimmy, basically from Jimmy at the Golden Gate Club. That's really the stronghold in America today of tournament casting, even though there's still clubs in Pittsburgh and Chicago. But I think that a lot of the FFI, the reason I'm talking about tournament casting so much is in East Tennessee, of course, we have no tournament casters. Tournament casting influences the FFI very greatly because Jimmy was one of the pioneers of starting the casting certification program. So you probably wonder, then why do we teach people like this so much, even living in Western Carolina? It really is because it's one of the most efficient strokes we could offer somebody to say, here's a foundation that you can build on to do all these other things. And I really believe out of all the styles that I know, that's the style I taught my kids when they were 1.5 years old. And both of them had this down by the time they were 5. Really, really down to where I already did my 10,000 repetitions when they were like 2 to 5 is when they got it. So I wanted to start them with the foundation they could build on later in life with other things. Is there any questions on any of that? Like this, anybody have anything? So I'll go on then from where we talked about the way to get into this Has anyone heard about the stages of the 4 stages of learning? And I think this is where a lot of people are. This is where, like, one of the kids, I'm not going to mention any names, but one of the kids that's from here, when he says, I'm just going to go take it. I'm just going to jump in and go take it. So he's in the unconscious and competent state. He doesn't even know it. All right. So those are the kind of people that jump in, but they don't really realize it yet that they're not ready. So it sounds kind of mean to say, but there's lots of people at that stage, to be honest, in life. It's just like, they think they've got all this and they don't. So then they go try it. And what's going to happen is then they hopefully move into the conscious and competent stage. And what that is, that's where y'all are at already, because you're listening to this about the CI stuff. So you want to learn something because you think you already know it all. I mean, so you obviously all are in the second stage. So that's a good thing. You're moving up fast. So that's the stage where they realize that they're going to go try to look for help. And they got to have an admission to seek that out, that they want help. And it's kind of like the first stage. They got a high school degree, and the conscious and competent stage, now you got a master's degree. And so they can get a lot done in that second stage. But the third stage is like getting your PhD, and that's what you call the conscious competence. Now you kind of see the light bulb come on, and you realize how it's together and starting to work. And I think that helps people a lot, because when they get to that stage, they start to ask really intelligent questions. Here's how you can tell the difference. I can tell you as a teacher is the 2 stages is this. When they're still at that stage trying to learn it, they're always people look for a singular answer. They just tell me what it is. Just tell me what it is. If I've heard that, I'd be a retired millionaire. Or every time I've had a student, just tell me what it is. But that's not as easy as that, because there's a lot of things at play. So there is in casting. I mean, there's still a lot of things at play. We'll talk about the 5 essentials and some of that in a little bit. But see, when they get to this stage, they can already see the complexity, and they're starting to see how it fits together. But the one that everybody's wanting to get to, and that's the one that makes fishing much more enjoyable, is where they can kind of get into a flow state. We call that unconscious competence. Now we look at a technical piece of water, a bunch of trees and foliage around us, and we're still able to pull it off. And we didn't even do a thing about the process to do it. We just looked at it, assessed it, and did it without even a hesitation. That's where we want to be. And so I still believe, as much as I did when I was a kid, I believe casting defines our sport of fly fishing. A lot of people argue with me on that still. I don't care. But they'll say, Mac, you can tight line, you can Euro net 10 feet of line and catch a lot of fish. That's true. But you'll never catch a lot of fish when you're trying to swing wets at 80 feet away and you can only throw 10 feet of mono. So anywhere there's a handicap and a weakness, believe me, the weakness will show up if you fish enough days on enough water types. So, I mean, you get on something like even carp. Y'all fish carp up there very much in Kentucky? You got any good carp fishers? So I like those. Like I thought maybe up there.
I don't like them.
You don't? I just like the way they pull. That's why I like catching carp. But carp are way smarter than trout, I'll just tell you. Carp are really, really a good fight. And carp are always technical, long distance, fine presentation to keep them from being spooked. So I kind of enjoy. They're ugly. I mean, not as pretty as a trout, but they're a lot funner when they're pulling. But that kind of is the 4 stages. I think that helps get it kind of in where it helps people kind of like, where do I want to be? That's why I was saying before, like, stay away from too much technical papers and things until you're getting in that later stage. In other words, that overwhelms people. If they're in stage 1 or 2 and they're reading a whole bunch of technical things that are way over their head, it's going to run them off, I think. So I think it's just easier to look for somewhere else, to get that. So let's talk about some of the simplicity of some of the wisdom of, like, a lot of the folks in the CICP, just things that I've picked up over the years from it. Is Mel was really big on always discerning substance versus style. And so style might be like how you stand, how much torso rotation versus how much, square ahead to your target. There's all these different things that influence someone's style. But all of these things come back to all having basically the same mechanics, no matter how you move the rod from point A to B. And so I think that's a really good way to look at a lot of these styles and appreciate all the styles. I mean, even though I said I prefer to teach a beginner this tournament style casting stroke, I like all the styles. They all have their purpose. Has anybody watched Bruce Richards cast? I mean, Bruce is a beautiful cast, but he casts like with his elbow out here to the side, and he casts from shoulder rotation. All of his casting is from this shoulder joint. Why would that be advantageous? Bruce used to like saltwater a lot. So you're wading in a flat and the water's up to your chest. You're not going to be able to do the elbow forward style in saltwater. So that's where Bruce started to do this a lot and perfected it, and it became his style. But I don't know. See, everything has an advantage due to that style, depending on how deep you're wading. Are you standing in a boat? Are you standing up to your chest? Are you in a float tube, a belly boat? There's a lot of reasons why all these styles are still talked about today. So I think it's good to think about a lot of those styles. But since we're talking about Bruce, I'll tell you one of the things that he brought out years ago in the program was called the 6-step method. I'm going to just explain to you how easy that is. So I know all of you have been around casting enough to know what I'm talking about here. So you're working with somebody and they're throwing a big floppy loop. You could drive a Mack truck through it. It's so ugly. Okay. When I say ugly, I mean, it's not ever going to go anywhere because it's basically a beginner stroke. So the way to correct that real quick without picking out fault after fault after fault, because we could tell them 10 things, but we could just tell them a couple. So the couple things that you'd want to tell them is, be like, well, say his name or her name. I don't know, just call them Caster 1 or something. Caster 1, you see that big floppy loop? And they're like, yeah. Remember what causes a big floppy loop? When you move the rod through a big arc like this. When you move the rod through the big arc, why? Why is the rod moving through a big arc? Because you're using all wrist, okay? Common beginner habit. How are we going to fix it? So we call it the 6-step method because we talked about the lines of big floppy loop. We said the rod's doing this big floppy arc, okay? Then we say, well, it has to be the wrist doing big floppy back and forth like this. So now we're going to say what? Let's use less wrist, okay? Less wrist. Going to reduce the arc. And guess what? Now we got loops going back and forth. It's absolutely brilliant because even a kindergarten kid or an 80-year-old man or woman's going to follow along with you when you teach it that way. And that's what a lot of the program's about, is breaking it down simple for them where they can get it. Because most lessons with you are people that are going to fish less than a week a year. So you're not going to go into all this casting geek lingo with somebody fishing only a week a year. Because I'll be honest, if they fish only a few days a year, they're really not digging casting that much, are they? They're just doing it a couple times. So where you're going to go into that stuff that's a good way to teach those people that go that little, is what I'm trying to say. Is there any questions on that 6-step? All right.
No.
All right. Well, I'll go on to another one here real quick. It's kind of serious. I'm going to share another link with you here real quick on this. I don't know if can you see that one before where it says chat? I'm just going to put this up so everybody can see it. So part of this, let's see here. There we go. Yeah, I just shared another one. All right. It's called Casting Terms, Casting Definition Glossary. Here's something else I'd recommend to you. I put this out back in the early 90s, this casting. I mean, it says 2009, but that was on the Western Carolina page when I taught at the college. When I was a kid, the other thing that was lacking big in our sport, and you can see why it only goes to 1854. When I was working on my book, you have to realize back in the early 90s, fly lines has still not been described as saying, here's a loop. I mean, here's a loop shaped a candy cane. All right, there wasn't even a term to talk about the bottom leg or the top leg of the loop or the side. I mean, basically the end or the part attached to the fly rod. I'm like, man, this is archaic. How are you going to teach and push this sport along? There was no definitions whatsoever. So you're going to look at those definitions and you're going to go, holy cow. But you got to remember, I'm a casting geek. I could have just done a few and stopped. Well, I went ahead and put like everything that I thought we'd ever want to discuss as teachers. And so there's a lot of terms on that. Somebody got a question?
Oh, yeah. I know.
Okay.
No, I'm good. Oh, wait a minute. There is a mess. There is one. Hold on.
Yep.
No, it's not.
Okay. No, I thought somebody asking something. But no, it's good to have that because I know Paul. I mean, when Paul came down here and did that, I could talk to Paul with most of those things on that page. And there's probably, I don't remember how many's there. I think there's 300 plus definitions. But I guarantee you, as soon as I say it, he's got an idea where I'm going. Does that make sense to everybody? You got to have definitions. We can't talk about anything and push it forward if we're not going to talk about what something is. And that was what was really lacking. I mean, I've got all these books. I don't know if you have a bookshelf right back here. Most of that's my granddaddy's library. He was a doctor in South Missouri. That's who started me at 5. But he had all the early A.J. McClain, Joe Brooks. I mean, I have all these old books that go back to like Eric Taverner. I have all of Taverner's things. I mean, I still read there's a lot of good gems in some of those books from the 20s and 1910 and 1930. But the sport's moved along, is what I'm saying. We can't look at those old books and think that's where we are today, because it's also moved a lot further ahead than that time period. So there's gems there to take with you. But as far as the casting goes, casting's moved along for sure. It's a lot further along now than it was in 1920. I know it sounds silly, but it definitely has moved along. They didn't talk about how to do, like a lot of the curves and things that we teach today, they didn't even know they existed. You have to realize back at the 20s, they didn't do those kind of things. They basically cast like this and they threw it straight every time. So just think of the problem with that. How are you going to try to get a dead drift presentation if we're throwing it straight across the water every time? Basically, people probably weren't very good presentationalists in 1920s, what I'm trying to tell you. They weren't, because they didn't have the tools, the technique, or they didn't teach people how to throw the other. Now, somebody might have learned it by accident, but they probably didn't teach it to get others to raise the bar with them. So, and then I think that's a lot of it with the sport it's just getting terminology that we can talk. And there's also a lot of that on the FFI website, the main site. Really, it's underutilized because a lot of the stuff that goes on there is a lot of people put a lot of time on these committees to put up videos and do the. They said Justin just told me I'm cutting in and out. Is that still coming in and out?
Yeah, off and on. It's okay right now.
Okay. Hey, let me just try something real quick. Then I can get this. I'm going to turn something off. Just 1 second. Connor. Tell Duncan to turn off. Hey, I think that'll fix it. Because one of them was downloading some schoolwork, and the TV, everything's online, like Netflix and all that. So they're taking up some of my bandwidth. So is there any questions on any of that so far?
No, I don't.
No, that's good. Good stuff.
No, we're good.
Hey, Mac.
Yep.
I want to try to get you to be the whole screen. So could you go down to the bottom and share your screen, full screen?
Share.
Try that.
Screen 1, yep.
Well, your picture's not showing.
That's not going to do it. That's only going to make it worse. I locked on him the video for everyone, and it just I don't know. It's not working.
Okay.
I gotta go back and figure out how to.
Yeah, undo that, Mac. That's not going to work. Just go back. Stop sharing your screen.
Yeah, I see it. Sorry about that. Yeah, I was not sure how to go back there at first, but yeah, I don't really have stuff. I mean, I don't have like a PowerPoint on that. We have PowerPoints we'll do for CI, like before people are going to take the test. We go over like an hour. That's when you do your test. I don't think Paul, he might not have said that, but there's also a written test. But to be honest, the written test, if you've been for a few years, I think anybody can pass the written test, to be honest. Pretty simple, because it's all stuff like what is the, what's a different way forward, a level line, or double taper, things like that. Those are so mundane questions. If you've been in this sport, I feel like that's a pretty simple thing. Some people might go, holy cow, what's a double taper? Well, if you need to know that, then go research a little bit. But most people that have been around lines, I mean, that's a real commonality. That's the only three choices there were as a kid.
Right.
Somebody sent something just now. I got to figure out how to see what it says. Somebody asked a question.
I don't see any questions.
Oh, somebody asked a question from is a preference for mono or fluoro? To me, there's
Josh.
That's a
Josh from Kentucky.
Internal joke. But go ahead and give your answer. Give your answer.
To be honest, I'm not using either one these days, but I try a lot of different things. it's kind of back to what we talked about earlier. It's the same in leaders. Like people want an absolute. Okay, people always want an absolute. Just tell me the answer. Life doesn't work that way. Fly fishing sure doesn't work that way. And if you don't believe me, just look at all the books why there's the Harvey leader system. And there's like every icon that's ever been's got their leader recipe. And you know what? You could take somebody talented that understands energy transfer and mass distribution, building a leader. And for any given day, depending on the fly, they'll build the leader to do exactly what it's supposed to do. There is no one leader. There is no one, even with material, like talking about that question just now, for the last week or so, I'm throwing Kevlar right now, 16 strand Kevlar. So I'm not using fluoro or mono. It's okay. The reason I'm throwing it because it's really, really small. I'm fishing right now the equivalent of 9X just for fun. I've been playing with that. I just got it after you left, Frank, the other day. It came in the mail. And that's all I'm fishing right now is Kevlar. And I love it because I'm able to sink a fly much quicker on 9X than you throwing 6X. Okay. That's why I'm fishing.
One day too late.
What's that?
1 or 2 days too late.
Oh yeah, you were 2 days too late because I just got it. But I really enjoy throwing Kevlar. But I mean, there's different materials and things to play with and tinker with. I think all things that push this forward. It's just like they all have strengths. There's pros and cons to all of it. There's also drawbacks to Kevlar. I mean, I fished Kevlar a lot when it first came out back in the late 90s too. And one of the drawbacks to Kevlar is I had a large fish and I was out in the West Coast up in British Columbia. And a large fish started rolling. You've seen fish roll sometimes when they get hooked. Well, the drawback of Kevlar is when the fish roll, it filleted one whole side right off his body. Just like a samurai sword doing like this. And I was like, uh-oh. And I mean, because I didn't expect it to start somersaulting, but the Kevlar cut it all to pieces. Mono would have broke and Kevlar just sliced. Okay, so that's one of the bad things of Kevlar. It's very, very sharp. When it gets bound on something, it's very hard to break it. Okay, so there's strengths and weaknesses with it, though. But I think that's really true. The thing to get into with all this is to just keep an open mind and talk to people, get peers that are kind of on the same thing about facilitating, like what Paul said. Like I have a lot of peers, I mean, that are mentors to me when I was young, and I'm lucky they're still alive. I still talk to them quite a bit, man. When I think about around the world, a lot of my mentors live in Spain, but I still keep up with them probably 6 times a year. And every time we talk with them, it's about a 3-hour conversation. So I don't talk to them often. When we finally get to catch up, it's usually a pretty lengthy discussion. But I think you have to have that to move forward. I think you have to have people you're bouncing things.
You're cutting out off back and forth, and Paul was saying he was getting a lot of echo. I didn't notice the echo, but you're kind of cutting in and out again.
I did. Might be this long.
Yeah, I think the idea of turning off all the video feeds might help.
You mean all these feeds?
Yeah, if you turn off everybody else's video feeds, it should increase your bandwidth.
Oh, really? How do I turn them off?
I'll stop.
You might have to do it individually. I'm not sure.
They have to do it individually. So everybody turn off your video.
Well, that means you can't wave and thumbs up and stuff. Well,
that's true.
Yeah, I know.
Sheila, I noticed when you talk or if you were typing, it cut him out. So you might try muting. I think whenever someone else talks, it cuts him out.
I'm not.
Really?
Other than when I was talking to him, yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that too, Sheila, that when you're on, it cuts him.
Gotcha. It's let me tell you one other book as far as talking about teaching, since we're on the subject of CI and teaching other people. One of the best books when we're talking about to learn aesthetic sport like casting or it could be coaching basketball, how to shoot free throws. It doesn't matter what kinesthetic sport. There's a good book by Daniel Cole. It's called The Talent Code. And I've read that many times. We use that philosophy with the youth kids. We also coach Team USA youth kids the last 15 years. But they've had 9 individual world champions. And the thing is, it happens. This area, as far as this isn't better than living in New Zealand or British Columbia by any means. Those fisheries are fantastic. This has got pretty mountains here and other things, but it's not that it's a destination for trophy world-class fish by any means. It's got a lot of technical attributes. But in that book, The Talent Code, he studies like the Russian tennis players, the soccer players in Brazil. Basically, the point of the book is anywhere to have a real high level of any kind of that people are going after. You got to have all those people live together. And in the Southeast, all those kids won the worlds except for one kid was from Boston. All the other kids live within 100 miles of Bryson City. And the reason I say that's good, and you have the highest level kids always practicing and fishing with kids that are their ability. So what keeps getting them better and better is doing their own thing. They've got 5 or 6 of their peers that are on the team with them, and they're pushing each other all the time. And so that's a lot of the lessons from that book. But more importantly, it talks a lot about myelination, like how do we learn this motion, like the pantomime, just a nice, you know, for the first task of the CI test that we were talking about. How do we throw a nice, beautiful seat back and forth, just by pantomime, elbows up, elbow drops. It's that simple. Elbows up. Here's the funny thing. I mean, I got to tell y'all this just because I teach shows a lot in the winter. This last winter, Gary and I taught an all day long class before all the shows, an 8-hour class. I know y'all going to laugh. Oh, you're making that up. No, I'm not. If we did it here and I had everybody's video feed on, we'd do this. We'd have you, I don't know if you can see me. Can you see that? So we lift our elbow up. That's really simple. Hand has to be up as high as our head. Then all we got to do is drop the elbow. That is the casting stroke. The funny thing, you go in a room and tell that to 100 people. I guarantee you there's only 8 of them that do what I just did. They've already misconstrued it. They get up here, and their elbow raises, and all of a sudden they're doing this. You see the difference? Half of them do that. Half of them are going to start going like this. That's not what I did. My point is, that's the fun thing about teaching. So you say it the best way you know how, like a monkey, training a monkey to just copy your motion with you. And what happens? They always do something else. So that's the thing. People do not listen as well as you think they listen. And you know that when you teach a lot, because then you go picking them out. None of you listen to a thing I said. Do it with some humor. And then they all laugh, think it's funny. But no, I'm serious. They didn't listen and do something as simple as just say, raise your elbow. If you raise your elbow, I've learned as a teacher, it never works. If I say, Frank, raise your elbow, it won't work. What'll work is if I say, Paul, bring your finger to your ear. There's only one way your finger's going to make it to your ear, and that means to lift your elbow so your finger gets to your ear. People command basically to get their finger in the proper position it needs to be. If I start saying things like lift your elbow, people just ignore that. I don't know why, but I've learned this a lot over the years, that people only pay attention to their hand is what I'm trying to say. Where their hand is in space around their body, they'll get that real quick. But if you start giving directions about move your elbow here or there, they're going to ignore you. It happens every time. So we talk about the elbow going up and down for years. But it's really true. Every big thing that I've ever done at clubs, big events, we call that pantomime. That's from Mel Krieger. When we pantomime this motion up and down, Mel was way ahead of his. When he taught that to Jimmy Green and Gary at one of the shows, he made a bet with him. And Gary and Jimmy both lost the bet right away. And Mel said, I'm going to tell you what the bet was. It was out in Colorado back in the 70s. And Mel says, I'm going to go grab 10 strangers that have never touched a fly rod. And this is for real. He just started grabbing, hey, man, will you come over here and fly cast? And he told them, I just need you for 10 minutes. And he got 10 strangers for 10 minutes. And he taught every one of them the double haul with the fly line in the rod. So he took people that didn't even know anything about casting, and he taught them all the double haul. How'd he do it? He pantomimed that whole thing for 10 minutes with them. Then he stuck a rod in their hand. They all did it. So a lot of people that teach the haul think, I just don't know what I'm doing wrong. I've been doing this for weeks, and this person, they just don't seem to get it. Chances are the instructor's not putting it down right, is what I'm trying to say. It's not that, because if I can take 10 strangers like Mel and do the same thing, probably it's about being an effective communicator, about getting them to do it through pantomime. Pantomime is what is in that book of Daniel Cole when it my so the news is, everybody, and Paul brought that up, which is good, is practice, but not just practice. Like people do that all the time, but you got to practice to be better. But too many people practice with no goal or no specific thing in their practice regimen. That's just a waste of time. It really is. Like practicing doesn't do a bit of good for you unless you're practicing to improve upon what you're already doing. So we do that by marking the line. Like I remember doing this years ago as a kid. When I started wanting to throw more distance, I'd have a a black Sharpie, and I'd mark the line where I was able to throw it then. So then I had a grail, and I'd always try to go past it a foot or 2 or 3 feet and see if I could hold it there and false cast with that much line. That's the drill he gave me back when I was young, because I mean, he had a lot of good holding game. So then he said, well, Matt, basically you're at the level now. He says, you need to hold the backing knot, 90-foot line, hold the backing knot and practice your false cast. And look at the 90-foot line like a shooting head. To do that took a long time. It really did. Because I'd get to like 78, 80, and I was like, man, it's impossible. That next 10 feet seemed like it was going to be an eternity to ever get there. Then I got there, and then I was like, okay, it wasn't so bad. I mean, I had to learn some things to go to that other distance. It's good to set yourself goals, and just like when you practice to get, to get better, not just to be practicing. I mean, because practice without an intent is kind of a big, you got to have an intent. So I think practice regimen needs to change all the time. Like you go out one day and say, I'm going to work on my accuracy. So work on your accuracy for 15 minutes and say, I'm going to work on some aerial mints. Now you're throwing stuff left and right, basically like curve cast, but you're just doing it with an aerial min. When you stop the rod, you move the rod out, back. Most people do that, I'll be honest. Trips, an article from Michigan right now. And I said, well, let me tell you, Matt, you want me to write it like I'm doing a guide trip? You want me to write it like if I was fishing myself, what I'd want to do? He said, how you'd want to fish. I said, all right. And I said it to him like that is when you're guiding people, the biggest limitation when you're guiding is always like you're getting somebody that goes maybe once every 5 years or sometimes, okay? Then other times you got somebody that's got a lot of skills. Your job is, your guiding though, is to match what they can do and they can do well for what you think is going to give them success. It might not, I would say 80% of the time it's not what I'd want to be doing, but it's what they can do. I mean, it sounds harsh, but it's the truth. Because I like swinging wets, like on the Tuckasegee out here, it's a big river. And I like throwing Irish wet flies, 3 of them, and I like swinging usually the best of any technique because it puts up more fish because I can cover a lot of water with it. And there's 3 flies on there, and when they follow that thing swinging, I'm showing it to a lot more fish, so I feel like it's a lot more productive. Is there any questions on any of that? But the myelination, the thing about bad news is after we get to 10,000, it doesn't mean we master it. This means now we're starting this motion down where we can repeat it and do it over and over and over and look like we know what we're doing. But once you get up there in the hundreds of thousands and in the millions, like Steve, people wonder all the time, how did Steve do all this at these world championships so many times? There's from teaching with before that Steve has probably thrown more loops than anybody on the planet. And I mean practicing to be better kind of loops, not just throw back and forth. He is an absolute machine, and he's thrown that many millions of to get where he is. So I use this acronym a lot with the kids when we're coaching the youth team. The word fail is an acronym to be first attempt in learning. So you're going to fail. I mean, everybody, you're going to fail early on. But if we look at it like it's the first attempt in learning, I would make the point like this, that Steve is, he's won 6 world championships around the world. Steve is the best that's ever been in the sport. He really is. He's better than Marriott that I told you about. He's the rod designer for G. Loomis. But I promise you, Steve failed more than anybody on the planet to be where he is right now as such a robot. To have this robotic, perfect stroke he has, he had to throw a lot of them back before he throws them like he's throwing them right now. And I think it's that way with PGA golfers and everybody. They didn't just fall off a cabbage truck. Okay? Yeah, it's good. There you go. I like this. Karen sent me a thing on the chat. Does everybody see that? But she just sent me. It says beginners practice to get it right. Experts practice to never get it wrong. I mean, just think of that a second. That's that same thing about the 4 stages of learning we were talking about. But I think practice definitely has to have an intent, what you're trying to accomplish. You know, they've really got to have an intent. So let's talk about one thing that I know right now, as much as I teach Aston over the years, that will help all of you a great deal. And I'm just going to tell you idea and theory. I might be off base, I might be wrong, I don't know. But I will say this. If most men were indoctrinated from young kids, because I built bow and arrows a lot as a kid out of Osage wood. I fletched all my own arrows. I did a lot of archery as a kid. What are projectiles? If we want to throw a ball harder like baseball, we want to throw a football further, we got to throw it harder. And that mentality totally has to disappear out of your head to be a good fly caster. Because in casting, we teach all the time with everybody, kids, men, and women. We're always telling them less is more, less is more. That gets into something kind of geeky that I'm not going to go into right now because y'all would be like, man, this is boring. But the way a loop propagates, it's accelerating already as soon as you create a loop. You don't have to do anything to tell it to go faster. It's going to go faster just because the kinetic energy formula, which is the fly going faster and faster once you form the loops. Everybody understand that? The longer it's propagating forward, the fly's moving faster. In fact, it's moving so fast that by the time it turns the corner, it's still going faster than the speed of sound. So for you to sit back here and lunge at it and try to hit it harder, it's not going to make it do any better. In fact, it's just going to make things worse. That's why kids, you tell a kid to back off and go really easy. A kid will go easy just when you tell him because he's not indoctrinated yet from sports. See, the longer and older we get as males, I really believe this. We've heard it all our life about more is better, because everything we've done in sports about more is better. And that's a hard thing to get across. So you almost have to just, when you pick up a fly rod, remember to like really back off because there's a lot of things I do in demos on the road at shows. Like I was telling this to Jonathan Walter today, a friend of mine in Denver, Colorado. Like, Jonathan, try this one next time you do a roll cast with people. And I was explaining it to him, but you can make a roll cast 40 feet by holding your arm and everything up in its position and just leaning your body forward and then backing your body back up and never even move your arm. When you do that, people's world is totally flipped upside down. I'm not doing it to be a magician. I'm doing it because I know the mechanics work. Because what I've really done by moving backwards, I gave the rod leg greater tension. It's going to go shazam and turn the whole loop over. So, I mean, when you do something that slow and you got a person sitting there, you just got to imagine. And they're going, and the sound's breaking, the rod's breaking the sound barrier because there's so much whoosh going on. And then you go up there and do what I just said and lean forward and lean back, and there it goes. And it's actually going further than all that power they're using. That ought to get a point across. That's why we do these things. And Mel was big on that. When I first met Mel at one of the shows in the 80s, one of the things we were having dinner, and he tells me, he was the one that started talking a lot about less is more, less is more. Be honest, every time you hear something good like that, teacher even, a lot of times things don't sink in. It took me years to appreciate what he said. I mean, it took me 15, 20 years before I really understood what he was trying to say. And he didn't elaborate on it. That's one of the things about a great mentor like Creeder and Jimmy. Telling you just a word or a sentence, and it takes you 20 years to see the light of what they were probably going at with that. And I think that makes them an exceptional, motivational type teacher, you know, because when you see the light, Mel passed away of a brain tumor years ago. And unfortunately, we'll never get to ask him again, hey, that's what you meant by that. But I mean, it's too bad I can't ask him that now. But I mean, there's a lot of wisdom of things. Carol wants me not to tell him, oh, don't worry. I don't think he'll make you do that yet, Carol. But he understood what I was describing there. She sent me a message about rollcast. She's been working with Jonathan in Denver. And a commonality, though, I'll be honest with you, so I'll tell you something here, because I've been teaching casting since 1985. And here lately, a lot more for a living in the last 20 years. I've never had a man yet that casts slow enough. That ought to tell you something. I mean, I've never had a man yet that casts too slow. All of them cast too hard and too fast. So that's something to back off on. Usually, you can slow kids down real easy. And I'm not picking on men. I'm just saying I think it's because men are indoctrinated from sport. We have more of that in our repertoire because I played a lot of sports growing up. And I just think we're taught as young kids that more is better, more is better. And that's one thing I like about this. It's like the opposite. It's like yin. And over here, you got sports that say do more, do more. And in casting, we're usually saying do less. I guess I'll tell you what'd be good. If anybody has I'm going to take a little break real quick. And if anybody has any question of anything like casting related before I go on, like whatever it might be, tails, whatever, we talk about it. I don't care what it is. And if not, then I'm going to go on and talk about something else I think will help you. Anybody got one? Let's see here.
I don't see anybody with any messages.
All right. I've got a couple here that I hadn't read still.
Okay.
I like that quote. I'm going to steal that right now. Let me steal that one. So when I see something that I really like, I got to go ahead and copy and paste it onto saving it somewhere. But that is a really good one. There's a lot of them I use a lot with the youth kids too, from John Wooden. I use a lot of John Wooden quotes when we're coaching the kids, because I think that one person that I would have loved to have met and taken on the water. I think I would have learned a lot of good things. Oh, Carol's got a question, just came in. It says, what's causing acceleration with the hog? Well, that's a good question. There's several things. One of the things is just like, is it simple arithmetic of saying you pull the string this much, you know what I mean, and you move the rod this much, so it's just simple arithmetic of however fast you went here and add it to how fast you went here? No, it's not. And that's the nature of how a loop works. So you got a kinetic energy formula of a loop, and this is where it gets a little tricky. But if you increase rod leg tension, hold on a second, she wrote another question. She says, Jonathan says it's a pulley. I think it's a rotational acceleration around the pulley, and then the line flies off on a tangent. Yeah, they're both right. Both of those would be right. If you think of it like a pulley, that's how I used to think of it too, as a pulley at the rod tip. So when you haul, the line comes flying off the rod tip hot. In my book, see, this is kind of funny. When I was at Western teaching, I always wanted to have photographic time gates like pictures had, but I never had access to them. When I taught at the college at Western back in the 90s, all of a sudden I could go in the physics department and pull anything I wanted out because I was a professor up there. I was like Frank for a few years. I got to go in there and I could say, hey, I want to play with this. And they always gave me whatever I wanted. So I had photographic time gates. I could set up a thing where I could shoot hauls. I could shoot a single haul. I could shoot just a normal cast. And what I learned real quick from the study, Carol, to answer your question, I mean, this will help answer it. Then I'll tell you why it does it. But if we're just making a cast, and I had 30 feet of line, just a normal cast with no haul, the average speed, and I put 20 casters, good casters from around this part of the country that were friends of mine, and the average was 77 miles an hour. And when we single hauled, we took it to like 167 miles an hour. Just one haul on the front increased it from 77 to 167. That ought to send light bulbs off. If you're going on a bone fishing trip in Belize and you're thinking, man, that wind came up, it was 20 miles an hour, it was just off. I just told you the answer. If you pull just a single haul, now you're going 167 miles an hour. A 20 mile an hour wind is nothing, absolutely nothing. Now, if I double haul, it takes it up like, remember exactly, but I want to say around 247 was what the photographic gates we did from that study. So now you're from 247 from just 77 where we started. Does everybody understand what I'm saying there? So the difference is almost quadratic. And absolutely huge. But I'll tell you why, because it's the rod leg tension. You're increasing rod leg tension, and anytime you do that, that's like the pullback we use in a roll cast. It's the same thing as when we do a snap. Does everybody know what a snap is? Wish I had a little mini rod in here. But a snap's when you draw like a long, skinny U, and then you come back fast, parallel with the way you do the slow part. When you do that, you can send 60 feet flying the opposite direction. So that's the analogy of what the haul does, is because when you do a snap, you're basically manipulating all the acceleration only in the opposite direction, yet it makes everything fly a long way somewhere else. So I think if you stick with the pulley, Carol, I think that's how I've looked at it for years. I still look at it that way. Just imagining this invisible pulley up there, and if I want it to spin around the pulley, flying off tangent, all that's part of it, but there's some more something in there that I still don't think I can put a finger on still. I just know the numbers, but I don't know exactly why still. I don't think anybody does, to be honest with you. With all the brilliant engineers and casting geeks like Richards and Al Burr and Robert Gillespie in Ireland and all the best in the world, none of them have articulated it yet to my liking. And I mean, I haven't either. I'm saying we're still searching for what that might be. We just use poets' language, like looking at it like a pulley is kind of like, you know, like Mel was also big on that. Poets and engineers. They both bring a lot of good things to the sport. So everybody's going to be one or the other. They're either going to be like really into all the whys and hows and or they're going to be poetic and just want to go out there and come up with new things like a Bob Dylan with fly rod. So I think that those things are very legitimate in our sport. But let me think here. What else would be good for you to talk about tails? I mean, we'll talk about tails real quick just because we see them a lot. God, and I mean, I see them a lot when I'm working with people. That's back to the whole projectile motion thing. Let's hit it, man. The wind picked up 5 miles an hour. I'm going to hit it. And anytime somebody hits it early, even more important, and it's going to be a problem because there's a whole lot of things going on. They don't have enough repetition to go hitting it without getting some catastrophic problem, which is going to be a knot somewhere all down in the line of the leader. Usually it's in the leader of what I see. Usually if I have 3 fly rigs and all 3 flies are just, they call a bird's nest. And of course, that's not a pretty sight. That's where we bring the nippers out usually and start over for the whole thing. So I'll tell you this though, for a tail, if I can find something big enough to hold, you'll never, ever get a tail. It's impossible to throw a tail, in my opinion, if you do that 3-point grip and pull with those 2 fingers at the bottom. In other words, I'm not forcing a rod over. It's the same with Steve and all the tournament casters that I know that do great distances, is they're pulling this. Here's the 3-point grip, and I'll do it this way. So when they're making a stroke, see, this is the back of the rod. There's no way they can push the rod. All they can do is pull those 2 fingers. If you pull from the bottom of the rod with those 2 fingers, I promise you'll never throw a tail the rest of your life. So if you have a lot of tails, I can also promise you this. I guarantee you one of these, you put your thumb on the back, you think fly casting is whack it with the thumb and push forward. Because everyone I've ever seen that has a tailing problem is pushing with their thumb hard to turn the rod up. And so they think they're doing good, but they're really not, because they're getting knotted every 3rd cast. Getting 3rd cast knotted is not cool. That's really not fun for you or your guys. Hold
Mac,
on
I
here.
have somebody that has a question here. It's Josh Lillard. He says, what's your favorite flight for trout? Your go-to, the one that you throw more than the rest. Go-to fly trout fly.
If I'm mostly around here, one of my mentors too, that's local here, he invented the mop fly back in the early 90s. When those little mops came out, the guy's name's Jimmy Estes. And I saw him today. I see Jimmy and fish with him still all the time. He's 79 years old. I would say, I know it sounds funny, but the mop is probably the best fly for this part of the country overall. Because when it works magic, it is a magical pattern. It works good, Carol, out where you live too, on the Williams Fork, the blue. Everywhere I was out there when I saw you in Denver, that's what I fished the entire time was a mop. And I don't think a lot of people throw them in Colorado, obviously, because everywhere that I go with it, it was very productive. And you'll see people throwing a lot of tiny blue wings and things like that. But it's better to go down deep, like on the Colorado, up there by above Kremlin. I forget the name of that little town where the Williams Fork comes in. Forget the name of that town. But the Colorado is a lot smaller there. And anything in those deep holes, the same thing here. Anytime there's a deep hole, you want to catch a big brown trout, throw a mop fly. A lot of big brown trout throwing little blue wing olives and things like that. I mean, I love dry dropper fishing and fishing natural stuff, but the mop flies produce more fish. We won 2 world championships for the youth kids on mops, if that tells you anything. That's how it got written up in the Wall Street Journal and the London Times back in 2006. They wrote it up because it was that good a fly. But we had an individual world champion kid from Atlanta, plus the whole team won on the mop fly. And everybody else in the world's going, man, what's that? They'd never seen it. The guy that invented it lives here in Bryson. So that'd be my favorite fly, yeah.
What color?
Well, that's a tough question because it depends on the time of year. If it's July, we throw a lot of them in green to match we have a lot of different, when people think inch worms, they think the little bitty, really, really small diameter, like the size of a pin. But we have sourwood worms that are bigger than your little finger. We have inch worms basically that vary between the size of your little finger all the way down to the little small sizes. So I like the green ones in the month of July. Usually I like the sandy colored tan ones is what I throw the most of because that matches your crane fly larva. And if I was out west in the Black Canyon of the Gunnison, I'd be throwing an orange one and I'd take a black Sharpie and have it half orange and half black on the top. And I would fish that because it'll match the salmon fly. So it just depends where we are, but I have them in every color. I mean, I have mop material in every color, including pink, black, gray, all the colors. Because the other thing we do a lot with them is we use Pantone pens so we can shape different colors. Like with the yellow one, we have a lot of golden stone in the park. So we'll take yellow and we'll hit the top of it with a brown Sharpie. And then it's just so quick. I mean, you tie a mop fly in under 15 seconds. That's why we fish them so much as a guy, too. I mean, I don't want to sit and tie a Prince net with 10 steps. It takes me almost 7 minutes to tie when I can tie in 15 seconds. That's why guides use them so much, to be honest with you. One, they're highly effective. But here's a good one here. This is another good one for y'all. I just happen to sit, this is in here next to one of my time devices, but can you see that? It's called a Rain-X mop. And this is the best micro chenille fiber there is. Rain-X mop. If you just keep your eye open on the internet, I bought these off of Walmart's website last year because they're normally like $12 and they put them on sale for $1.50. And so I bought like 50 of these for $1.50. Why? Because this is the best material that I've seen. The Rain-X mop is kind of a yellow tan. You see what that looks like? But you buy it in this little ball. And we just take the scissors and nip one off, lash it on a hook. Sometimes we fish them unweighted. You got to be careful with weight. Like even when we tie the mops, like I'm talking about, if we're fishing water knee deep or less and it's really slow, we don't usually use a bead at all. The mop material will sink like it's a neutral density, but then the weight of the hook, it'll sink plenty fast on its own with no weight. If you want to fish faster water and get it down, we might put 3.5, 4 millimeter tungsten. But when I open my mop fly box, my point is I've got them from unweighted all the way to really heavy, depending on what we're trying to do. So I don't use split shot. I didn't say that, but I don't use split shot ever. I haven't used split shot in 30 years. That's a good question. He likes the mop. Tim says, oh yeah, that's good. Can everybody see the stuff on the chat thing, or is it just me? I can't tell how that works still.
No, I think everybody can see it.
Okay, good. Yeah, but I use that a lot too. I see Mark Lesor, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. I teach that a bunch at casting clinics here. We use that saying all the time. And that's one of the things with getting people to start to have precision, like in accuracy. I think that is so good talking about acceleration, because that's really what, casting's easy to get overwhelmed with all these different ideas about, oh, maybe the arc was too big, or maybe I'll tell you a beautiful thing is this. If you get into this journey of doing the CI, you'll just want more. You'll do it, and then you'll want to go a little further. And the thing that I would say is the most valuable thing you could do, you're going to laugh when I say this, but every one of my friend casting geek peers that's really good teacher, they did the same thing. I didn't major in physics or engineering. I majored in economics. So when I got really into this, teaching a lot, I was lucky. At Western Carolina, there was a doctor there named Glenn Lyman. He's a graduate from Harvard, PhD in physics. So I had a guy that had such a brilliant mind that taught in the building next to where I taught the class, that anytime I had a question, I could go over and ask him. And here's what blew me away about it. He had no interest in fishing. He'd never picked up a fly rod in his life. And you'd show him something, he could tell you way more about it than any expert on the planet. So then I said, I want that. I want what he can do. Why? Because he didn't even do it. And he knew more than most of the casting instructors that I knew, because he's so grounded in the mechanical world of how it worked. So he kept spoon feeding me all these books to read. So my point is, when I was teaching the first 3 years that I taught the program, Glenn and I had a good relationship. Every week or so we'd go out and eat lunch, and he'd be like, Matt, you need to get this one. So he put me on the right path to learn mechanics. So I learned the mechanics after I was already a graduate with a master's degree in econ. So I learned it all the hard way after college. See, I'm jealous. Paul learned it like he studied it. He's an engineer, so he already knows it. I had to work hard to go learn what he knows, because I had to read it at night, and a lot of it I didn't understand. So then I'd run back in and he'd clarify it. So anything I didn't understand, I could run back in and ask him a question. But it really solidified and put things together how it worked for me, is having somebody as a mentor like Glenn Lyman to go be able to ask something to. Because there wasn't any hillbillies where I lived that could have answered those questions, I can tell you. I mean, like, I don't know. But it's nice to have somebody like that in academia that's close to you. Hey, I see Charlie Nichols there too. I just saw you. Hey, Charlie. I didn't know you were on there. Ask a question, Charlie. You missed the 4 stages. Did you hear that, Charlie? I went through it quick. That's the guy I learned that from. The 4 stages of learning a few years ago when I met Charlie. He came up to he was in one of the guide schools and also the casting class, the two-day class. We do these guide schools during the year that are a week long. And I remembered, I was like, Charlie, I feel like I should be paying you today, because he kept dropping all these nuggets of wisdom about like the way people learn. He did a lot of sales training. And I learned so much. I came home and told my wife, I said, today was awesome. Because when I get to come home and I learned a whole bunch of new things, that makes a pretty special day. And so I learned a lot of really good things off of Charlie that day. And then, of course, we talk still, and he gives me some really good things to build on. But yeah, the mop fly, definitely, if you're going to fish this part of the country. But I'm also, I do a lot of dry fly. So I'll say this, if I was going to pick a dry fly for this area, where I would look is a lot of the European flies. I tied catskills and wolf style flies a lot as a young kid in the 70s. Anymore, I still fish them on trips and things, but all of the flies that's in my personal box are all CDC. I don't have anything with hackle on it anymore. I've been on this kick with CDC for close to 20 years. So like Petitjean tools, French mallard. It's hard to get good CDC in America, I'll say that. All of my CDC I buy out of Romania or France, because the French mallard is by far the creme de la creme of feathers for CDC. It's way thicker feathers. We just don't have good quality CDC in supply houses in America. So if you become a CDC aficionado, you're going to have to look for it over there. If anybody wants to know, I'll give you some sites. But I do a lot of fly tying still. In the wintertime, I tie usually about 9,000 to 10,000 patterns for the following year. So I'm almost in another few weeks, I'll be back sitting at the vice time. I don't buy flies. I've never bought a fly for my guiding business or my schools. I've pretty much tied everything. And it's getting harder and harder, I'll say that. It's getting harder to keep up with it. One reason because of these. I don't see as well as I could see at 20 and 30. So 57, when I start tying little flies, of course, I need some big spectacles on to be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm a little bit slower, I think, tying the small stuff now. Is there any other one?
Well, Mac, we appreciate your being a part of our family, and I am going to be sending something out to see if anyone in the club would be interested in going for certification, or even if it's just starting the skills challenge process.
Right.
We are one of the largest FFI clubs in the United States.
Yep.
And I think we ought to contribute something.
Oh, yeah, you need instructors. We want an army of instructors doing it right.
Yeah.
So, that might be a good idea. I know Mike did a lot with the skills. I mean, I saw an award he got last year, I think it was, for the skills part in education. And so I would tap in with Mike and maybe do it like that and run a bunch of them like on a weekend or something, and run a bunch through.
Yeah.
Then
So
kind of find out out of the
that.
ones that do it.
And I've made a decision myself personally to go for the CI.
Right.
And I'm sure I'll be tapping Mac to be a mentor and teacher. I think you're the closest one, and also one of the best. So
well, it'd be fun. I don't know how many you have. I have to look at the map. Another thing, if you have friends around the country and they're curious about it, on the map, the FFI website, you can highlight an area where you are in the country, like pick a state, and it'll show you all the people that are actually doing it. And they need to yeah, I mean, it's a good thing, because a lot of people are a long ways. And well, Paul's not far from you either. I don't know how far it is how far does it take to drive Ohio from Cincinnati? Because you're way up north, aren't you, Paul? Like, how far up north?
Yeah, I'm at the other end of the state, those guys.
Yeah.
probably 4 hours or more. Yeah.
And Ohio has its own. I didn't know that till today. I thought Ohio was part of like with Pennsylvania and all, but Ohio is its own council. Like when you cross the river there at the Ohio did like what Florida did in Sicily. I mean, it's basically the whole state is one, which I was surprised. I thought Ohio was part of that northeastern part, but it wasn't.
That's right.
Yeah.
And also, anybody wants to get out fishing, the Finns Lakes are stocked, and they're getting to be stocked, and Otter Creek's gonna have 2,500 more trout stocked this Saturday, and the other streams in Kentucky, and so, we could, I'm going on little trips with one other person and trying to stay away from large groups and stuff and stay safe, but I'm still getting out fishing, probably, 4 or 5 times a week. So
that's great.
So, and I'm going to be coming down to your neck of the woods, Mac, next week, now that you've given a positive report. So I'll be down there for probably around 4 days.
Okay.
And I'll look you up.
We just had a big hurricane again yesterday. So, it's still south of us, but the front that came through, last night it started really heavy rain about 9 o'clock and it went till 6 this morning. And we got 4.5 inches. So it's flooded right now again. The river spiked. Everything's blown up again today. And it'll be good, though. By Saturday, a lot of the park streams will drop. But it's been a hard year with the storms, and it hadn't been hard really with COVID. I mean, it's been the busiest year I've ever seen, even though it's a pandemic. But what's hit us hard is we've had 30 hurricanes this year. That's unheard of that have come through here. 30 different hurricanes. That's a lot of floods. The problem is, in this part of the country, we're getting what they call the 100-year flood now, getting 10 and 12 events a year. And then they say that's a 100-year flood. I'm like, wait a minute. Somebody needs to go back to the drawing board, because you can't have 12 100-year floods in the same year. That's what EPA and all of them keep saying. But the climate, it's just unreal. We've had more water than I ever remember this spring.
Yeah, it's bad.
A lot of high water. So you want to bring some heavy mop flies, put you some tungsten beads, get them good and heavy, because it's going to be big water this weekend. Everywhere, like even the park streams will be big.
I hope by midweek next week, things will have settled down. What do you think?
If we don't get a bunch more rain, it's supposed to be colder too, though. Saturday, we've been real mild. Like I've been in shorts and a t-shirt the whole month of November.
We have been too.
Saturday's going to be cold. We're supposed to get back in the 20s again Saturday. So I think winter's coming. Maybe starting Saturday. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. And if any of you get into doing it, just feel free to message people out. Frank is getting ready to go through it. Carol that was on there, that's what they were on there for. I know Justin that was on. They're kind of in that same, they've been working on it for a while. They're close to getting ready to take it. And but I think it's just a fun journey. It's like, the one other thing I will tell y'all is people like that are closer to our age do it a lot easier than like somebody really young. Because you already have a lot of life experience. And this is what I've seen just from the schools that I've run here. Because I have some that are like 25, 30. They can do the skill stuff just pretty quick. But when it gets to the teaching, they're basically our articulation skills are so pathetic that they'll bomb the teaching, guaranteed. Why? Because they've not taught enough yet. So like we've had a lot of people from different walks of life, like psychologists, engineers, you name it, doctors. They come through, they articulated all their life, and now they're 50, 60 years old. And guess what? When they get to the teaching skill, it's a home run. So I'll say that people that have already worked and they're retired are definitely going through the teaching part like nobody's business. And I think it's just because it takes years to learn to articulate in their jobs and professions to do what they're doing. I did notice that. They're very successful in the teaching aspect. And that's what the program's about. So in a way, it's kind of fun. That's just a fun observation.
Well, Josh, it's about time for that door prize, door prize raffle. Do you have the list that you can randomize? If not, I've got one. Josh Lillard, are you there? Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
I don't have it, Tim.
I've got it.
Give me 1 second here.
Hang on.
Hang on.
Oh, okay. You got it, Randy?
Mac, thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much. Y'all have a good night. Hey, Justin, you might be the lucky winner. You need to stay on there. But I enjoyed it. And if y'all have any questions or whatever, just feel free to give us a call. And
Thanks a lot, Mac.
Thank you.
y'all have a good night. Thanks for
All right.
having me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, Randy, we're counting on you, bud.
Hang on a second here. I'm trying to, hang on.
Hey, Tim.
Yeah, I don't know why it won't let me share my web browser here. Hang on. We're going to do it this way.
Yeah, somebody had a question for me?
It's Jack. Do you
Hi,
have
Jack.
do you have the first link? I was late. He had a first link, and I got the second link, but he sent out a first link.
Yeah, I can send that to everybody.
Thank
Okay,
you.
can you guys see this? Can you see this?
Link is in the top of the chat.
No, you're
What?
gonna have to share your screen, Randy.
It's not it's not letting me share the screen. Can you see this here? Hang on.
I see it.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Okay, that's Brian Urey. How many prizes are there?
3.
Okay. Milton Wise and Betty DeVita.
All right.
Brian Urey, Milton Wise, and Betty DeVita.
Great.
Well, I'm subbing for my bride, so I don't know why when I register, it's always in her name.
Awesome. Well, see you guys.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.